What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Goldfishing companion video for the 3-for-1 tribal deck that I brewed in under 60 minutes. Today we are going to be playtesting this on Tapped Out to see how the deck actually plays, how it feels, determine the level of clunkiness, and determine if it is doing what we designed it to do. Before we start, if you enjoyed this type of content, please leave a like on the video and hit subscribe. I always appreciate the engagement. It lets me know what you like on the channel. So before we get started, there are a couple of edits I made really quick that I would like to show from when we last brewed this. I really took a look at some of the cards that are in blue that are worth running that fit the theme that we want to do. So first of all, Kitesail Larcenist is a 3-mana 2/3 human pirate with flying and ward 1. When he ETBs for each player, choose up to one other target artifact or creature that player controls for as long as it remains on the field. The chosen permanents become treasures and lose all our other abilities. Additionally, we have Lagrella the Magpie, which is a 3-mana 2/3 human soldier. When it ETBs, exile. It's basically an O-ring effect, but on a creature. So with these, I wanted to bring down the curve of the deck just a little bit, and I also wanted to bring in another creature or increase the creature count while also targeting more creatures overall, being able to interact with creatures. And so we also replaced Dismantling Wave with Intellect Devour, which is a, let me search this up, Intellect, where, oh, is this not coming up? Intellect Devour. What the fuck? Intellect Devourer, 4-mana 2/4 horror. When it ETBs, each opponent exiles a card from their hand until it leaves the battlefield, and then it grants us card advantage by allowing us to play lands and cast spells from among the cards exiled with it. And then if we cast a spell this way, we may spend mana as though we're mana of any color to cast it. So because we are playing the cards that it exiles, I look at this as a pure win because the opponents cannot get those back. And this isn't quite enough, I think, to be cause for removal. I don't think an opponent would spend like a Swords to Plowshares or a Path to Exile on it. Although, you know, it's because it's only a 2/4, it's not a really threatening body. However, it does sort of add a cycling ability onto the individual removal spells, but I just don't think that incentivizes the opponents enough to actually spend a removal spell on this, especially when their items have been casted. So with that in mind, I had to make a couple of adjustments to the mana base. We added in a few Triomes, Ketria Triome, Zagoth Triome, Raugrin Triome. We added in an OG Duel because I wanted to cut out the basics and the tutors for the basics to just accommodate as many colors as we possibly can. So yes, we will absolutely get hosed by a Blood Moon or a Back to Basics in this deck, but those tend to be pretty rare out in the wild. There's also, I replaced a Plains with Polluted Delta so that we add another fetch land and then another fetch land to get us more of our colors, which I think actually all of these changes, so Visions of Ruins, we went from a 4 CMC to a 3, Skull Slitherworm from a 4 to a 3, and then Dismantling Wave from a 3 to a 4, so really the curve pretty much stayed the same, but we added a lot more access to colors, and now, especially with our commander being able to generate mana of any color, I don't think this deck will ever run into color fixing issues. So this is our land analysis. We have 27 white producers, 22 blue producers, 27 black, 28 red, and 33 green. So this will be plenty to allow us to cast the couple of blue spells that we have. In addition, the other benefit towards expanding this to a 5-color deck is that we can cast the Prismatic Bridge, and we have a pretty high CMC curve on average. So casting the Prismatic Bridge is a boon when we don't need the extra mana fixing that Isika would provide. Now, the mana base slowed down a little bit. We can see that we went from about 10 tapped sources to about 13, and we have a decent amount of life loss as well by adding in some of those fetch lands. So, the mana base is a bit slower. I would say, though, that this deck is a little control-y in that it wants to really push the game into turns 8 through 10. So I don't think that's as much of an issue. We are always hopeful that we can cast Mana Dork turn 1, but even a Mana Dork turn 2 would allow us to still cast our commander turn 3, which is when most people are casting their commanders anyway. Okay, let's hop into the playtest. We are going to start off. I think I actually need to. It will actually keep the scroll bar. Okay. So what I'm looking for is 3 lands. We have 2 ramp spells in this particular hand, 2 lands, and I'm going to actually play out all of the fetches and everything as if it were a real game so that we can get an idea of the amount of color fixing that is being provided. I will say, though, this hand has pretty expensive spells, although they are all absolute bombs. So we have a pretty solid late game. So I think we'll go ahead and start off the turn by drawing a card. And we do have, let's see, a Taiga. We can technically play a Vastness Pilgrim turn 1. So I'm going to play the Taiga and then tap for Vastness Pilgrim. So now we have Naya colors. Path of Ancestry will enter tapped. We can cast something for 2, and I think I'm going to cast Nature's Lore to search up. So we have Naya colors. We need black, blue, and it has to be forest. So that limits our choice to Zagoth Triome. So we're going to search that up. That will enter tapped, and then that will take the Vaesen mana. Now, I'm thinking our best option is to cast our commander because we don't have any super spicy plays for 4 mana. Depending on what our opponents have, we might consider an Aloran Searing Light, but I think it's a little bit early. If our opponents had their commanders, if every opponent had their commander out, then I would cast Aloran Searing Light, but I think for now, we will go ahead and cast Esika and Scry 1 off of the pass trigger. We don't really need the card advantage, and I think... Well, do we need the card? No, we definitely don't need the card advantage. We have a ton of that, so that will go to the bottom. So on tapped out, you can't actually just put something on the bottom, or at least I'm not aware. Maybe there's a keyboard shortcut out there, but I'm just going to go ahead and hit shuffle. Excuse me. Zayator's Proving Ground on the top. I think we will keep that because we just want to keep playing lands. So that will be the turn, and we are on. Let's see here, turn 3. All right, so we'll go ahead and pass. So next is we play the Zayator's Proving Ground. Then we have 5 mana at our disposal. So here is where I think I would start to ask myself, what do the opponents have? If we would like to target an artifact or enchantment, I would probably cast the Chaos Defiler, giving us a 1 in 3 chance to hit that. But honestly, it's almost always a good idea to cast a Soul Shatter. Soul Shatter is just never disappointed to see it. Or we would cast a Aloran Searing Light. Now, I would also like to keep in mind that we want to be building our board, so the Chaos Defiler gives us the advantage in that it's just another body on the board. Theoretically, if we had an Alpha Strike in hand, which Return of the Wild Speaker kind of is an Alpha Strike, we would really be focused on building up our creature count. However, I think next turn, let's see, if we draw into an untapped land, we can play Atali or Breach and basically generate a ton of card advantage. So I think right now we're going to save the Soul Shatter for maybe later in the game and cast the Chaos Defiler in order to generate as much board presence as we can. So it's a 5/4 trample, and we will snipe one of our opponent's things. Maybe it's something that we wanted, maybe not. We'll go to our next turn. So we'll hit the Ketria Triumph off the top, leaving us 6 mana to do with what we please. So here is where I think we might want to cast a Return of the Wild Speaker or hold it until the end step of our last opponent's turn. And I think I would do that because essentially we don't need the extra pump effect that it has, even though I kind of went on a mini tangent last turn about having that board presence. I think that if we, that is a good point. Maybe we do want to hang on to it. So flip-floppy, so flip-floppy. I think the 5 cards, though, at instant speed, because we have Chaos Defiler on the field, I think that's probably still worth it. We can potentially draw into another Overrun effect. So we would wait until our opponent's last turn, and then we would cast Return of the Wild Speaker, assuming that Chaos Defiler is still on the field, or we would cast it in response. So we'll go ahead and assume that we draw 5 cards off of that. So that's 3 lands. We've got a Moonshaker Cavalry. That's absolutely perfect. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, so we have to discard 2 cards. So I think we'll discard the Vivid Meadow for sure. And then Soul Shatter and Aloran's Searing Light are basically the same. I think I would just get rid of the Aloran's Searing Light. We would go next. We would drop an untapped land. And here's where we would absolutely go off. We would probably want to play 6, 7, 8 mana that we have. So I think we would play a Jessica's Will, and assuming we still hold Asika because she doesn't really get removed that much because she's not that valuable, we would exile 3 cards, and then and I probably shouldn't have played that land, but then we will add, if we just treat the red mana as colorless, essentially, we would be able to cast, and if we assume that the number is 4, so we generate a mana floatings. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana that we had. So now we have 9. So then now we would probably want to cast a Selvala Stampede, and then we would choose for ourselves to vote for something, and then we would cast, our opponents would probably want to rip something out of our hands, so then we would cast an Atali, and then we would cast the Moonshaker Cavalry and potentially the Bountiful Promenade, assuming that all 3 of them voted for free, and then we would hit something off the top with Lagrella the Magpie. That's more removal, perfect. And then after all of that, we would still have the mana to cast Soul Shatter. Oh my god. Selvala Stampede is just the greatest. One of my favorite, actually it is my favorite card. It is my favorite card in all of Commander. It's fucking awesome. Okay, so now we have a new scenario here, and I wish I would have recorded. Well, I can look back at it. I think that was about turn 8 that we were able to end the game by, unimpeded. So we have 3 lands. We have a 1 mana drop, which is perfect, an overrun, some removal, and some removals. This is exactly what we want. So I think we'll just go ahead and play a command tower and then a noble hierarch and go. Oops, we have to actually draw our first card for 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, forgot to draw our first card. Okay, perfect. So I think we would then play the Polluted Delta. We would crack it for. We'll just say like because what do we need here? We have Bant, we need red, black, I think. So, but I don't have any untapped red black sources. Let me actually pull up what our land list here. Let's see here. Let's look at our land list. Let's see. So we have Bant. We need, alternatively, we could search up for, hold on. So that would give us potentially to play either Somberwald Sage or our commander. And I think we'd want to play Somberwald Sage because we get to cast our commander effectively for free next turn then. So I think we're going to have to skip out on one of the colors, and we don't need red necessarily. So what do we actually want to build towards? We need 2 black pips. So we definitely need something with black in it. So I think we just get like a black, well, anything that's untapped and has black in it. So this is super annoying, by the way, when I'm playing in paper, and one of the reasons why I just am not a fan all the time of 5-color decks, because they just, okay, so hold on, we're gonna highlight this one, Scrubland. It's just why I'm not a fan of 5-color decks, because you have to think so much about your, oh my god, do I have a plains in here? Why do I have a plains in here? Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have to replace this plains. Why is there also, oh, this is from my old list. Hold on. Okay, here we go. So we're still going to highlight this Scrubland, and then we need to find an untapped black. So there's also the Overgrown Tomb, which I consider, but we don't really need the green. So I think the Scrubland is going to be our best option here. So we're going to tutor up Scrubland, and then we are going to tap it for a Somberwall Sage, pass. Now we can play a Morbid Opportunist or an Asika for free, and my gut says we play the Asika because it is just always good to continue to ramp. So that would leaves us with 3 mana to then play another thing. And I think we can actually just play both in this scenario. So we're going to drop probably a Ketria Triome. Hold on, actually, do we need... No, we don't need... Okay. So then this will be green. We'll cast Asika. Perfect. And then we cast 3 for Morbid Opportunist. Now, we don't have a way to reliably trigger Morbid Opportunist. However, it is board presence, and we can always just assume that there are going to be creatures that will die. So I think I'll just assume for purposes of keeping this very conservative that we won't draw a card next turn, but then the turn after that. So it'll basically be every other turn cycle it will draw us 1 card, which I think is a decent floor case. So then we'll play an Exotic Orchard, and this leaves us with, let's see, so we're on turn, so we need to start removing things, right? We're on turn 4. Our opponents have their commanders out and probably something else that's scary. So I think to let's see. So we can cast 3. So we definitely want to use the Somberwald Sage mana, and that would leave us with 4 to play a Lorn Searing Light. So I think we actually cast everything, to be honest, because we want to cast the Shieldred for sure, and that will give us an extra body. And then we also want to, I guess, depending on what our opponents have, I would hold up the 4 for a Lorn Searing Light. We'll assume we don't have to cast it right now, but we would draw a card. Let's see, sacrifice a non-token creature. So we would then draw a card off of the Morbid Opportunist and hit Ignoble Hierarch. So here's where I make the decision to either drop Ignoble or hold Allurance. We're going to assume that we still need to cast the Allurance on our opponent's turn, so I'm just going to put that in the graveyard, assuming we use this on our opponent's turn. And then we'll go next, and then we'll drop an untapped Duel, and then I think at this point, do we have enough to safely Akroma's Will? Is that even viable? Not really. We have garbage for power on board, so we probably... Well, at this point, we'd also be playing around a board wipe as well. So I think I would probably just cast the Ignite. Would you hold the Ignite? Well, depends on what I think our opponents kind of have, but let's just drop the Ignoble, assuming that we can sort of keep powering forward. And then we would cast an Atali. Oh my god, that's amazing. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And the Atali would exile a bunch of stuff, and we would cast a Grasp of Fate off the top, shuffling in the land, or actually, shoot, it would go into exile. My bad, misplayed that. But now we have things caught up under Grasp of Fate, and I think then next turn we could then both, I would probably do Top from the Rampart first, holding the Akroma's Will. And then I would probably then next turn cast Akroma's Will. So let's just see what we got in the next turn. Okay, land and then Akroma's Will. So that would not be, I don't think that would truly be enough to kill our opponents. I mean, we also have the threaten the activation of Shieldred, but that also depends on how many things are in our opponent's graveyards. But that's probably just enough to kill like 1 person, I think, and we're basically out of cards. Now, again, we're assuming that Morbid Opportunist only draws like 1 card every other turn, so, you know, if you sort of assume that it drew us a card, we would have more card advantage in hand potentially, but this is essentially a finish by turn 8 while controlling our opponent's board pretty well. All right, so let's go ahead and do that one more time. We're going to go ahead and restart, and this will be our final Goldfish of this deck. Now here we just don't have enough lands. We have 1 land. That's not amazing. And what I like to do when I just have decided to mulligan is just to sort of draw a bunch of cards just to see, like, if we had to play this out, how would it go? And this would go absolutely horrible. This would be a total stomping because we wouldn't draw a second land until Scalding Tarn. We would be on Ignoble Hierarch that we'd be able to cast, but we wouldn't be able to cast Somberwald Sage. So anyway, we'll just mulligan. Sometimes you have to mulligan. All right, perfect. 4 lands, 3 amazing finishers. I mean, just some of the best cards in Commander. So, all right, so we'll draw our first card for the turn. We're going to go Zaitor's Proving Ground, enters tapped, pass. We're going to go, let's see, do we have a 2-drop? I don't think so. Let's go next. Then we would go Spectator Seeding, enter untapped, and then we would cast probably Generous Patron just to draw. Well, do we draw 2 cards? I don't think so. I don't think we quite do. We probably want to ramp into Asika because we have the mana to do so. We would go next. Then we go Savai Triumph. We have 4 mana to play with. Here is where I would probably go. Actually, I don't want to... have to discard the card. So I think I'd probably just play a Bronzebeak Foragers with nothing else left to do. And then next turn, okay, we can run out. Let's see. So Vivid Crag. So now we'd have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we would then probably play either a Generous Patron or Grasp of Fate, depending on what our opponents have. I think if we played the Generous Patron, we could draw the 2 cards. So I think let's do that. Go next because we really need to draw into more land. Then we would go, let's see. So we'd have to spend this card ramping if we want to really keep the mana flowing here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 mana, so we could go Somberwald into Grasp, and I think I actually like that as well. Pier's Whim. Oh, it always enters tapped. Okay. So Pier's Whim is an option as well, but we don't have any 2-drops to follow it up with, so I think I would go Somberwald, 2, 3, and then Grasp of Fate, adding white, colorless. Boom, we've removed our opponent's stuff. And even if you assume that Grasp of Fate is removed, it will come back. That's totally fine. The name of the game is delay, delay, delay. So let's see. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus 9 for creatures. So we have 4 creatures on board. So I mean, Crater Hoof is a thing. However, I don't think it's super effective. I think we should hold it a little bit more. But with 9 mana, having to cast a creature, what we could also do is we could just cast a Baylor and follow, maybe just hold up the Chroma's Will as protection. We could also just cast an Atalia. I think that's probably not a bad idea. Depending also if our opponents have scary artifacts and enchantments, we could also cast the Pier's Whim, and then cast the Baylor. That would be 9 mana, actually. I think that's probably the most efficient use. However, it would also depend kind of on what our opponents have for their decks. Because, like, if there are a couple of fatty type of decks, then Atali would not be a bad drop. So let's just throw Atali out there. We're never disappointed to hit an Atali. We would hit a... Wait, does that go on the bottom? Until they exile. Yeah, this gets exiled. This hits the field, and then we would get Seize the Spotlight. So we'll just assume that our opponents draw us a card and create a treasure, and then we take control of 2 creatures. So that would give us... So we still have 2 mana left over, so not a lot to do with that. We technically have 3, but we can't really use it right now. So then that would go... this would go in the graveyard, because that was just cast. 6, 7, 8, and leave this untapped, maybe? Yeah. So that leaves us with 2 mana, and we can't really do a lot with 2 mana. So, here is where I think next turn, it's pretty clear we would just be able to play our Crater Hoof for the turn, and then close out from there. We would also then have a backup in the form of Earthshaker Giant. If we wanted if we were board wiped and needed to reestablish a board, we would go Breach the Multiverse, and that would have us mill 4, 5... 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we would have Shieldred that we could cast, a Scion of Calamity. Yeah, those 2. So we could definitely get another Edict effect in there, but I think that's, again, if we scroll up here, that would be victory by turn 8. So, again, this deck is really sort of built to win unimpeded by about turn 8, turn 9, and even if it goes a little bit longer because we're controlling the board, that's totally fine. We intentionally have kind of a ridiculous top end. I mean, the average CMC of this deck is roughly 4 point... Oh, shoot. I thought I had my Mox Field pulled up. Keep in mind, this is the old version. Everybody can see my privated decks. But we are going to see, I think this is 4.03, and we went down. This is the old version, so this doesn't reflect the Kitesail Larcenist changes. But again, if we can control long enough to really get our value generators onto the board, I think that just is perfect. And so this deck just does the kind of exactly what you want in Commander, which is sort of what I like to call the stiff arm, which is where as you progress into the mid game, you are just looking to keep your opponents at bay long enough to then establish your own value engine once you hit that late game to then perform that overrun or perform that giant bomb like Breach or Atali, so that you can generate all that value while your opponents are sort of temporarily out of commission, and then you can sort of close it out from there by killing perhaps the arch enemy or just the top one or two most threatening players, and then from there you should theoretically be able to close it out. But that is the video, guys. That was Goldfishing, my 3-for-1 Commander tribal deck. No nonsense allowed. We're the only ones allowed to do nonsense. So yeah, that is the video. Again, if you enjoyed it, leave a like down below and leave a comment with your thoughts on how the deck can be improved. Always curious to obtain feedback. And with that, I will see you all in the next one.